I start by sharing a personal fascination, an itch I haven't been able to scratch for years. I invite the audience to think about the most captivating, disruptive people they know, or the characters that always steal the show. We usually think of them as chaotic, but I want to reveal the terrifying truth: they are executing a masterful design. Think about the exact moment your life completely fell apart. I do not mean a tragic accident or a random stroke of bad luck. I mean the time you were utterly humiliated, profoundly deceived, or stripped of your most comforting illusions by someone who seemed to know exactly what they were doing. Someone who looked you right in the eye, smiled warmly, and then pulled the floor entirely out from under you. Society constantly reassures us that these people are just toxic anomalies, brief and chaotic interruptions in an otherwise rational, predictable world. But I have spent years quietly obsessed with dissecting the psychological architecture of human ruin, and I need to tell you a terrifying truth. These people are not anomalies. They are not agents of random, senseless chaos. They are the avatars of an ancient, perfectly calibrated design. And what is even more disturbing is that they are walking right beside you every single day, completely undetected, pulling the invisible strings of your reality. If you do not learn to recognize their blueprint, if you refuse to uncover the terrifying truth waiting at the end of this journey, you will remain their puppet forever. Welcome to the sanctuary of truth. This is Myth Eryndor. If you feel a strange resonance with the dark hidden mechanisms of the human mind, and if you are ready to stop being a passive victim to the unseen forces around you, hit that subscribe button right now. Support the channel so we have the fire to continue forging these psychological weapons for you in the future. I have an itch in the back of my mind that I have not been able to scratch for years. It is a profound, relentless fascination with the shadow figures of our world. I am talking about the ones who hijack the narrative, who effortlessly break the unbreakable rules, and who somehow always walk away unscathed, while the rest of us paralyze ourselves with compliance. To truly understand them, we must immediately shatter a massive, comfortable misconception. We frequently confuse the trickster with the fool. It is a fatal error in judgment. The fool is harmless, blissfully naive, and ultimately tragic. He is the wanderer who joyfully daydreams his way through his own life, entirely unaware that if he takes just one more careless step, he will plummet off a cliff and destroy himself. We pity the fool, but the trickster is an entirely different breed of predator. The trickster is the one who meticulously drew the cliff in the first place. He is the one who painted the fake scenery, who turned the warning sign in the exact wrong direction, and who gently nudged you toward the edge. And as you fall grasping at empty air, he stands at the precipice, watching your descent with a piercing, witty, and entirely cold intellect. He is not stumbling blindly through life. He is navigating it with deliberate, deceitful, and absolute brilliance. He is the timeless root of every magnificent deception in human history. As we step further into this investigation together, I need you to realize the sheer magnitude of what we are analyzing. We are not dealing with a simple personality disorder or a temporary lapse in morality. We are dealing with the ultimate lord of the in-between. The trickster is the master boundary crosser, an energy existing at the very bedrock of civilization itself. Think about the invisible lines society draws to keep you safe, predictable, and obedient. The line between right and wrong, the boundary between sanity and madness, the delicate threshold between the sacred and the profane. The trickster does not respect these lines. He owns them. He is the god of the threshold. Sometimes he is erasing the line, sometimes he is moving it while you aren't looking, but he is always standing right there where the psychological tension is highest. And here is the most humbling, agonizing lesson I have learned in my long pursuit of this archetype. No matter how meticulously we try to study him, no matter how securely we attempt to trap him within our neat academic cages of definition, we will inevitably fail. Whatever we do, he is always one step ahead of us. He is the brilliant, untethered improviser in a world of people strictly reading from a prescribed script. If you choose to remain blind to this energy, if you brush this off as mere philosophy, you are actively volunteering to be his next casualty. Look at the countless victims of modern con men. Look at the masses who willingly surrender their fortunes and their minds to charismatic frauds and sophisticated snake oil salesmen. We desperately like to think these victims are just unlucky, or perhaps less intelligent than we are. That is a comforting, arrogant lie. The truth is they are simply completely unconscious of the trickster. They have been lured into the trap not by the predator's genius alone, but by their own unchecked greed, their desperate naivety, and their profound, endless capacity for self-deception. The trickster operates like a flawless mirror. He uses your own hidden desires and unacknowledged weaknesses to hang you. To survive in a world governed by these hidden currents of manipulation, we must undergo a radical awakening. We cannot afford to be entirely pure, rigid, and naive. We have to become a little tricky ourselves. We must study the darkness not to become evil, but simply to guard against being consumed by the trick. The trickster is only purely disruptive and completely ruinous when he operates as an autonomous, unacknowledged entity in our blind spots. When we refuse to see him, he ruins us. But if we possess the courage to drag him into the light, everything changes. To finally drag this elusive phantom into the harsh light of our conscious minds, we must first examine the most disarming, dangerous weapon he wields against our fabricated realities, laughter. Let us travel back in time, just for a moment, to the cold stone halls of the medieval royal courts. Imagine the suffocating atmosphere of a kingdom ruled by an absolute monarch, a place where power was absolute and fear was the daily currency. In this world, a single misplaced word, a slight hesitation, or a perceived insult toward the sovereign meant an immediate, brutal, and highly public death. The air was always thick with paranoia, forced compliance, and silent terror. Yet right there in the center of this terrifying power structure, there existed one fascinating, brilliant anomaly: the jester. The jester was the only individual in the entire kingdom who possessed the dangerous, almost magical privilege of looking the king dead in the eye and speaking the brutal, unvarnished truth. He could point out the monarch's foolishness, the kingdom's corruption, and the sheer absurdity of the court's daily rituals. And he did this without losing his head. Why? Because he masterfully wrapped the devastating truth in the disguise of a joke. To signal his complete immunity to the rules of normal men, he wore a cap and bells. I want you to understand that this was not merely a silly costume meant for entertainment. It was a deliberate mocking mirror held up to the king's own heavy crown and scepter. The jester was the trickster incarnate, proving that sometimes human beings can only digest the bitterest, most painful of truths if they are forced to laugh while swallowing them. I look around at our modern world and I find myself constantly asking, where is our jester today, who is allowed to mock the kings of our era without being exiled? The truth is, the trickster did not disappear when the castles crumbled and the kings fell. He simply moved inward, taking up residence in your own mind. He awakens within each of us the exact moment we gain awareness of our own ego during our early childhood. He is our earliest, most primitive, and most vital rebellion against control. If we look at this through the surgical, uncompromising lens of psychoanalysis, the trickster is the living, breathing embodiment of the Freudian ED. He is the primal, unquenchable furnace of instant gratification, of raw bodily needs, and of wild, uncivilized emotional impulses. Now, I want you to think about how you actually live your life today. Think about the heavy, restrictive armor of cultural rules, the polite manners you fake, the soul-crushing deadlines, and the endless societal expectations you are forced to wear every single day just to be deemed acceptable. Psychology calls this the superego. I call it a suffocating psychological straitjacket. The trickster absolutely and violently rejects this straitjacket. He possesses a ravenous appetite and an enormous untamed life force, caring absolutely nothing for your carefully curated reputation or your desperate desire to fit in. He surfaces precisely when we become too rigid, too terrified of making a mistake. When you are drowning under the weight of your own meticulously planned schedules, when you take your fabricated social persona, that fake polite mask you wear to the office or show off on the internet far too seriously, he strikes. He is the invisible hand that triggers the Freudian slip. He makes you forget the names you desperately wanted to remember to impress someone important. He forces your mouth to open and say the exact terrible thing you swore to hide deep inside your chest. And when that awkward, unspeakable truth finally slips out into the open, shattering the polite, tense silence of the room, what happens? It generates a nervous, revealing, explosive laughter. Perhaps no philosopher in human history understood the supreme, terrifying power of this specific kind of laughter better than Friedrich Nietzsche. Nietzsche once suggested that if the gods truly practice philosophy, they must know how to laugh in a superhuman, entirely new way. A golden laughter that mocks all our desperately serious, tragic, and self-important human endeavors. He realized that laughter is not just a biological reflex, it is a profound existential mechanism. It is the bridge that mediates between the sacred and the profane, the exact realm where the trickster resides. When we finally learn to laugh, especially when we learn to look in the mirror and laugh at our own arrogance, our own failures, and our own absurdities, we are performing deep, agonizing inner work. We are actively shattering the fragile synthetic mask we wear to impress the herd. The trickster creeps up behind you, pinches you hard, and whispers the ultimate liberating existential secret into your ear: life is a play, and you are currently agonizing over a predetermined script written by people who do not care about you. But the magnificent, terrifying revelation is that you do not have to follow their script. You possess the terrifying freedom to improvise, to go entirely off script, to make your own catastrophic mistakes, and to laugh as the old rules burn to the ground around you. Today we rely almost entirely on our comedians to bear this incredibly heavy psychological burden for us. They are the modern jesters stepping onto the stage to boldly point out the glaring hypocrisy, the suppressed darkness, and the unspoken neuroses of our culture. They deliver the trickster's vital message, often at the great cost of their own mental stability and public reputation. They dive into the shadowy, controversial underbelly of society and drag it into the spotlight with sharp wit. But I need you to heed this warning carefully. When a society becomes too rigid, too easily offended, and too obsessed with policing thought, when it suppresses its comedians and attempts to outlaw the trickster's humor, there are severe, catastrophic consequences. The trickster energy does not simply evaporate into thin air. It is a fundamental force of human nature. If you ignore him, if you refuse to let him speak clearly through comedy, he will find another much darker way out. He will burrow deep into the collective unconscious, and that suppressed, boiling energy will mutate into deep, inescapable societal neurosis. The choice is yours. You can either invite the jester into the room and laugh at his jokes, or you can lock him out and slowly lose your mind. If we accept that locking the jester out will drive our individual minds to madness, we must now pull back the lens and look at how this exact same chaotic force has actively shaped and repeatedly threatened the entirety of human civilization. I want to take you on a journey far beyond the confines of our modern psychological neuroses. I have spent countless nights poring over ancient texts, forgotten folklore, and the oral traditions of tribes that have long since vanished from the earth. And what I found hidden within those fading pages sent a genuine shiver down my spine. The trickster is not some localized cultural quirk or a historical coincidence. He is a universal, primordial constant. He walks right alongside the most revered gods and the bravest heroes in virtually every culture that has ever existed. But you will rarely see him coming because he possesses no fixed, predictable form. He is the ultimate shapeshifter. He is as fluid, elusive, and uncontainable as spilled liquid. He slips effortlessly through the cracks of human history, appearing as a cunning fox, a mocking raven, a desert coyote, or a swift hare, adopting whatever disguise is necessary to infiltrate the system. Take Hermes from Greek mythology, for instance. He was born an outsider, a mischievous troublemaker, who started his career by stealing Apollo's cattle. Yet it was this exact, undeniable cleverness that won him an uncontested place on Mount Olympus. He became the divine messenger, the only god capable of freely traversing the high realms of the divine, the mortal earth and the dark, terrifying underworld. He proves that the trickster is the ultimate mediator, the guide who negotiates the boundary between matter and spirit. Or consider Brer Rabbit from African-American folk tales, the eternal underdog who is physically weaker than all his opponents, yet survives by using his sheer unadulterated wit to deceive and outsmart brute strength. These are not just entertaining bedtime stories. They are ancient blueprints of survival. To truly understand his terrifying dual nature, however, we must consider the Greek titan Prometheus. We are taught to revere Prometheus as a savior, but make no mistake, he was a trickster who committed the ultimate cosmic crime. He brazenly stole fire from the divine realm and handed it down to a primitive, shivering mankind. The gods were absolutely furious, and for a very good reason. They knew humanity was utterly unready, completely lacking the unselfish wisdom required to handle such immense destructive power. Yet it was this exact illicit spark of stolen magic that catalyzed our entire evolution, pulling us out of the dark caves and building our modern cities. This is the agonizing, inescapable paradox of the trickster. The very thing that is absolutely necessary for the progress of our species is simultaneously capable of orchestrating our total annihilation. I think about this constantly when I look at the world today. When I observe the breakneck, terrifying acceleration of artificial intelligence and the looming, unpredictable shadow of the technological singularity, I do not just see brilliant human engineering. I see the stolen fire of Prometheus. I see the trickster laughing in the mainframe, handing us a power we barely comprehend, daring us not to burn ourselves to ashes. And what happens if we try to stop him? What if we decide we are tired of the danger and attempt to eradicate the chaos entirely? Norse mythology provides a chilling answer in the form of Loki, the architect of deceit, who eventually crossed the line and orchestrated the death of Balder. The gods decided they had endured enough of his tricks, so they captured him, bound him in agony, and attempted to permanently remove his chaotic influence from their perfect world. But tying down the trickster did not save them. His imprisonment was the direct catalyst for Ragnarok, the apocalyptic downfall of the gods, and the absolute destruction of the cosmos they maintained. The philosophical lesson hidden here is profound and terrifying. If you attempt to completely tie down the trickster, if you try to sanitize reality and eliminate all unpredictability, you will inadvertently destroy the very structure of the world. But out of all the ancient tales I have studied, my absolute favorite manifestation is Iktomi, the spider trickster of Native American lore. Iktomi is a brilliant, morally ambiguous spirit who is constantly spinning schemes. Hidden within the lore of Iktomi is a prophecy that is utterly staggering in its modern relevance. Long before the invention of electricity, it was foretold that Iktomi's web would one day spread across the entire land. I want you to stop and really think about that for a moment. Look at the device you are using right now. We are currently quite literally caught in a worldwide web. We spend our days staring deeply into our glowing screens, completely captivated by the ancient patron spirit of new technology. We are navigating the intricate, invisible global threads spun by a trickster god who has always used strings to control human puppets. The myth is not a dead relic of the past gathering dust in a museum. It is a living, breathing reality. It is the human psyche's way of explaining our current, hyper-connected, easily manipulated existence. We are living inside the trickster's playground right now. This brings us to a harsh but liberating realization. Without this chaotic, disruptive, rule-breaking energy, our culture would not be safe. It would stagnate. It would rot into a flawless, sterile, and suffocating bureaucracy where nothing new could ever be born. We desperately need the trickster to tear down the walls. He sweeps in and delivers hard knocks to wake us up as individuals and as a civilization. He violently destroys old, outdated values specifically to clear the ground so that new ones can be planted. He reshapes the surrounding world with an inner magic, continually weaving the old into the new. As the great philosopher of chaos proclaimed, you must still have chaos within yourself to give birth to a dancing star. The trickster is that chaos. He is the vital, terrifying spark that ensures we never stop evolving. If we can recognize that this chaotic spark is the very engine driving human evolution on a grand scale, then we must now summon the terrifying courage to look away from the world stage and turn that exact same magnifying glass entirely inward. This is the exact point in my research where the comfortable academic theories vanish and the psychological reality becomes intensely, painfully personal. It is incredibly easy and often quite entertaining to point at ancient mythological gods or the invisible algorithms of the internet, marveling at the grand chaos operating out there in the ether. It is an entirely different bone-chilling experience to realize that the trickster is not just out there in the external world. He is breathing softly beneath your own skin right now. To truly understand the immense gravity of this, we have to walk away from folklore and descend into the clinical, unsettling depths charted by the legendary Swiss psychiatrist Carl Jung. Jung did not just view the trickster as a neat historical metaphor or a quaint cultural fairy tale. He identified this figure as an archetype. If you are unfamiliar with this term, it is a crucial concept that changes how you view human nature. An archetype means that the trickster is an inherited universal structural component of the human mind. He is a living, autonomous personality embedded deeply within what Jung called our collective unconscious. He is quite literally an organ of your soul. He is a psychological tissue forged from the raw, primordial experiences of all our ancient ancestors existing long before the concept of modern civilization was even born. The trickster is older, faster, and infinitely more ruthless than your conscious, rational mind. Jung described him as a bizarre, terrifying hybrid of a primitive, subhuman animal and a supreme, superhuman divine being. And because he operates silently in the dark, uncharted waters of your psyche, he is profoundly dangerous. Jung issued a warning about this archetype that I find myself thinking about almost every single day. He stated that the trickster forms a massive, critical part of our shadow. The shadow is the psychological basement of your identity. It is the dark room where you lock away absolutely everything you despise about yourself. It is the summation of all your inferior traits. It is your hidden cruelty, your unacknowledged selfishness, your petty jealousies, and the ugly repressed desires that you violently refuse to accept as your own. We try so desperately hard to keep this basement door securely locked. We build polite, civilized, meticulously curated lives to convince ourselves and everyone around us that we are inherently good, rational people. But psychology dictates that you cannot simply delete energy, because we refuse to acknowledge our own darkness. That unexamined trickster energy has to go somewhere. So what do? We project it. We vomit our own collective shadow outward onto the external world. I want you to look closely at the modern political landscape and our obsession with celebrity culture. Look at the charismatic leaders, the false prophets, and the great pretenders who stand on podiums promising absolute truth while delivering nothing but highly sophisticated lies. We willingly hand our immense power over to these figures. We allow them to manipulate us on a grand scale precisely because they are perfectly mirroring the unacknowledged, deceitful trickster energy that we have cowardice repressed within our own societies. We spend our entire lives obsessing over the physical dangers of the world, locking our doors against imaginary burglars while remaining completely tragically oblivious to the catastrophic danger brewing inside our own heads. The poet Emily Dickinson perfectly captured this terror when she wrote that our self concealed behind our self should startle us most. The true threat to your existence is never the stranger standing outside. It is the unknown, repressed part of yourself that eventually causes you to lose your own soul. But here is the profound, beautiful twist that completely shifted the way I view every major failure in my own life. If you actually possess the courage to stop projecting your darkness, if you turn around and face him, the trickster reveals his true ultimate purpose. He is not a demon sent by the universe to torture you. He is the ultimate ego demolitions expert. Our egos are incredibly fragile, desperate constructs. As we navigate life, we spend decades furiously pumping air into our own bubbles of greatness. We become obsessed with control. We become incredibly arrogant, narcissistic, and entirely convinced that our bank accounts, our job titles, and our flawless reputations actually mean something permanent. We start to believe the dangerous delusion that we are the absolute untouchable masters of our own universe. And right at the dazzling pinnacle of that sickening hubris, the trickster steps quietly out of the shadows, holding a very small pin. He bursts the bubble. He orchestrates the humiliation. He is the uncompromising energy within the universe that completely upends your flawless plans, topples your arrogance, and demonstrates with ruthless and highly embarrassing efficiency exactly how laughably small your wishes actually are. He dissolves the forms, the relationships, and the superficial identities that you are clinging to for dear life, specifically because they have become a prison keeping you from true growth. When the trickster strips everything away, it feels like an absolute tragedy. It feels like the universe is unfairly punishing you for your ambition. But you must understand that this is only your ego complaining. The humiliation is not a curse. It is a desperate, violent rescue mission orchestrated by your own deeper psyche. It is a profound, spiritual intervention. The trickster knows that unearned pride and blinding hubris always forecast a catastrophic fall. He humiliates you today to save you from destroying yourself completely tomorrow. He violently reduces your sin of pride. He forces you to drop the exhausting delusion of supreme control and realize that your personal power is microscopically limited in the vast, indifferent mechanics of the cosmos. This agonizing surrender of the ego is a strict, non-negotiable requirement for genuine self-realization and any real connection with the divine. It is a pattern so deeply ingrained in the human condition that it echoes fiercely through our most sacred ancient texts. There is a powerful biblical concept that captures this exact trickster energy perfectly. It states that the divine deliberately chooses the foolish things of the world to utterly confound the wise. It chooses the weak things of the world to completely confound the things which are mighty. The universe will always use the base, the despised, and the seemingly absurd to bring to nothing the things that are proud and firmly established. The trickster drags you kicking and screaming down into the dark valley of the shadow of death. He humbles you until you feel utterly useless, stripped of all your earthly titles and pretenses. But he does this for a magnificent reason. He strips away the deafening noise of your ego. He does this so that, in the absolute terrifying quiet of your lowest moment, when you have nothing left to brag about, you can finally hear your higher self calling you forward. To finally hear that quiet, profound voice of the higher self calling out from the wreckage of our shattered egos, we must look to the strange metaphorical world of ancient alchemy. When I first began studying the alchemists, I thought they were just primitive scientists, obsessively trying to turn literal lead into physical gold. I was completely wrong. Alchemy was never really about chemistry. It was a deeply coded map of human psychological transformation. And right at the dead center of this mystical tradition, driving the ancient alchemists absolutely to the brink of despair, is the trickster archetype. In alchemy, he manifests as the elusive, maddening symbol of Mercurius. Think of the element of quicksilver. It is liquid metal, impossible to grasp, constantly slipping through your fingers, and highly toxic if handled blindly. That is exactly who Mercurius is. He is the ultimate unapologetic paradox. He is infamous for his sly jokes, his malicious pranks, and his endless shape-shifting, yet he masterfully holds the absolute duality of spirit and matter in perfect vibrating tension. He is paradoxically associated with both Christ the pure and unifying light and Lucifer, the rebellious bringer of dark illumination. This duality is incredibly difficult for us to swallow. Our human minds are absolutely desperate to categorize the world into neat, comfortable, easily digestible boxes. We want absolute good and absolute evil. We want the hero to be entirely pure and the villain to be entirely wicked. But Mercurius, the eternal trickster, steps in to prove that this black and white thinking is a childish, dangerous illusion. He reveals that true psychological totality, the actual completeness of a human being, must encompass both the terrifying dark and the blinding light within us. He represents the legendary philosopher's stone. This stone is not a magical rock hidden in a cave. It is the ultimate symbol of the integrated, fully realized inner self. The trickster teaches us a brutal but necessary lesson. Psychological wholeness can never ever be found at the extreme edges of human behavior. Think about the extremes in your own life right now. If you live entirely in the light, completely rigid, bound by endless rules, and paralyzed by the fear of making a mistake or committing a sin, your spirit will eventually wither into an agonizing perfectionism. Conversely, if you live entirely in the dark, completely chaotic, yielding to every single passing impulse and bodily desire, you will rapidly dissolve into total self-destruction. The human psyche fiercely demands equilibrium. It craves the center. Much like Aristotle's concept of the golden mean, true virtue and genuine personal power lie in the razor-thin, terrifying middle ground between deficiency and excess. The trickster is the violent, necessary force that disrupts us whenever we stray too far to either side. He is the agonizing friction that forcefully pushes us away from the extremes and aggressively steers us back toward the center. This brutal, ongoing process of centering is what Carl Jung called the path of individuation. It is the most important journey you will ever take in your entire life. Individuation is the painful transition from being a fragile, ego-driven puppet controlled by society's strings into a sovereign, integrated individual. By enduring the trickster's relentless disruptions, we finally stop hiding. By allowing him to forcefully tear down our fake, polite personas and mercilessly expose our hidden shadow, we are miraculously liberated from the prison of our own unconsciousness. We finally learn to look at our deepest flaws, our past mistakes, and our darkest urges, and instead of feeling shame, we laugh. We experience that golden, superhuman laughter that genuinely heals the soul. When you reach this point, everything changes. You realize that the trickster, despite all the pain, the chaos, and the humiliation he has caused you, is ultimately a bringer of light. He is an agent of profound, permanent healing. He strikes the deepest, most resonant chord within our shared humanity because he violently forces us to grow up. He broadens the entire realm of your human potential by systematically destroying the artificial boundaries you placed around yourself. I want to leave you with this lingering thought as we conclude our investigation today. The trickster is walking right beside you right now as you listen to my voice. He is watching your meticulously laid plans. You cannot defeat him. You cannot outrun him. You cannot outsmart a psychological force that was born at the very dawn of human consciousness. But you no longer have to fear him. The next time your flawless plans collapse into dust, the next time you slip up the mask, falls and the world laughs at you, do not retreat into bitterness and do not play the eternal victim. Recognize the God of the threshold actively doing his sacred work. Look straight into the mirror, embrace the temporary, terrifying chaos, and realize what is actually happening. While the trickster may be bringing you your most agonizing and difficult lessons, he is simultaneously handing you the keys to your own absolute liberation. He is giving you the raw, untamed power to imagine, improvise, and create an entirely new reality. The game of life is undoubtedly rigged and the rules are a joke, but now you finally know how to play. Ciao, Faman. We have journeyed together from the medieval courts to the sweeping realms of ancient mythology and finally into the darkest, most closely guarded basement of our own psychology. The profound, inescapable lesson we must extract from the trickster is that unexpected chaos, sudden hardship, and the crushing defeat of our ego are not cosmic punishments. The universe does not owe you a perfectly predictable, comfortable, and painless existence. Waiting for absolute safety or clinging desperately to the illusion that you are completely in control is a tragic surrender of your own sovereignty. True psychological greatness is born only in the unforgiving fire of disruption. It happens the exact moment you refuse to play the eternal victim to your unpredictable circumstances. It happens when you assume absolute uncompromising responsibility for authoring your own path, actively embracing the painful friction of the trickster as the vital necessary fuel for your own evolution. So how do we actively apply this terrifying but beautiful philosophy to our daily lives right now? You must start by ruthlessly auditing your routines and the rigid beliefs you hold so dearly. Ask yourself, are these strict rules actually yours, or were they quietly installed into your mind by a culture that worships comfort, safety, and mediocrity? Start exercising your own inner trickster energy in small, deliberate acts of rebellion against your own massive ego. When a sudden crisis inevitably strikes your life, whether it is a devastating career failure, a heartbreaking betrayal, or a humiliating public mistake, do not collapse. Do not look up at the sky and ask, why is this terrible thing happening to me? Instead, look directly into the chaos, smile, and consciously ask, what magnificent unbreakable weapon is this pain forcing me to forge right now? Reclaim your autonomy by intentionally laughing at the smoking ruins of your old outdated plans, knowing that the cleared ground is exactly where your new empire will be built. Now I want to turn this conversation over to you. What is one specific unexpected setback or failure in your life that felt like an absolute disaster at the time, but ultimately forced you to evolve into a much stronger version of yourself? Please politely share your story and your perspective in the comments section below so we can all learn, connect, and draw genuine inspiration from the incredible journeys within this community. If you found value in this deep dive into the hidden mechanisms of the mind, please hit that subscribe button right now. Your support is the absolute ultimate motivation that allows Myth Eryndor to continue creating these deep, high-quality psychological explorations for you in the future.